Welcome to the question of the day. Today's question is from Stan in Nevada. Stan asks, how much should I talk during a call? That is a fantastic question. The answer to this question, it's a lot like that story, Goldilocks and the Three Bears. You remember the story, right? You either have kids and you read this book, or you were a kid and had this book read to you. But Goldilocks and the Three Bears. So Goldilocks goes into the house and everything is either too much or too little. So like the bed is too hard, and then the next bed is too soft, but then there's the one that's just right. That's how talk time works. It's either too much, too little, or just right. Now we know the salespeople that talk too much. You've seen them, right? These are the cliche salespeople. Everything is about them. They are constantly telling their stories of what happened to them. They're the hero of all of these stories. They're giving their opinion. They're giving direction. They're telling the customer, this is what I would do. If it were me, this is what I would do. And they're telling all the things about them. And worse off than that, they're not even listening to you. They're not even listening to the customer. And even if you do chime in something about yourself, it's met with a uh-huh, and then back to them because they're the hero of this story, right? So that salesperson that talks way too much. Now, on the flip side, you have the salesperson that doesn't really talk at all, doesn't talk much. It's awkward. That's the best way I can describe it. It's awkward. You've been a part of those conversations. It's quiet. Often the customer usually leaves themselves because it's weird, right? So we want the customer to come with us, and that's how we set it up at the visual agenda. We want the customer to come with, but very quickly they realize this is really weird, awkward, quiet conversation. And so that's when they say, well, I got that thing I got to do, and so I'll be upstairs. Right. And so they leave, and now we don't get to build rapport because we don't have the customer with us. Now we don't get to learn any. Your number's going to be higher. So they're not going to go with your number because they don't feel anything when they think of you. They just think of that awkward conversation. So, what's the right amount of talk time? Well, the great thing is, in the past, I would tell you what I think, I would tell you what I experienced, but I would never have data to back it up. But today, we do have data. We have data to back this up. There are a number of AI tools out there, these AI tools that are listening to a sales call. They're recording a sales call and they're comparing that sales call against a process. And this gives us all kinds of information because it can compare your process to the process that you have documented. And we've seen that when we adhere to the process, the more that we adhere to the process, the higher our closing goes, the higher our average sale goes, the higher our total revenue is. But we can also measure other things. We can measure things like words per minute. That's not something that we often talk about. We just get that feeling of like I'm talking really fast and just rattling off a bunch of stuff. But this can actually look, the AI tools can actually look and see how many words per minute are you rattling off. So are you nervously rattling off a bunch of techie information, or are you just slow and mundane? And talk ratio is one of those things we can measure as well. So when you look at the AI tools that I've looked at, they all seem consistent in this fact. The highest performing salespeople have about exactly a 50-50 talk ratio with the customer. So about 50-50. That I would define that as a good conversation, right? Give and take, 50-50. Most salespeople, though, are hovering more around the 70% talk ratio. So the customer is only speaking 30% of the time. So that tells me most salespeople don't have a good talk ratio and they're making themselves the hero of the story. They're leaning towards that first example that I talked about, where it's all about them, their stories, their opinion. This is what I would do, right? So that's what most salespeople are doing. But the best salespeople are at about a 50-50 talk ratio with the customer. So how do those highest performing salespeople achieve that 50-50 talk ratio? It's questions, open-ended questions. A great salesperson doesn't actually talk a whole lot. There is that cliche that salespeople talk a lot. And there is a lot of salespeople that talk a lot. There is. But great salespeople don't. And in my experience, the best salespeople I've ever worked with, they didn't fit that cliche. They didn't talk a lot. But what they did really well was they asked good, open-ended questions. They got the customer talking. And these aren't just system questions that they're asking. This isn't just technical trades questions that they're asking. These are lifestyle questions. Needs, wants, dreams. What would make this awesome? These are questions about them, seeing something in the home and being curious, staying curious and asking about it. Everybody likes talking about themselves. We just have to feel safe to do so. And so what I do by asking these open-ended questions and building rapport with the customer is I make them feel safe, that they can share, that they can open up, that they can talk about themselves, that they can be the hero of the story. And I'll sprinkle in my own little bits and pieces here, but I never make it about me. I'll sprinkle in some stuff of what we have in common or experiences I've had, but I never make it about me. It's always back to them. Always back to them. They're the hero of this story. And that's what gets us to the 50-50 talk ratio. Make them the hero of the story. I'll give you an example that I was blessed enough to see firsthand. I was riding along with a salesperson, and we were in this older gentleman's home. And it was just him, all by himself. Didn't have a wife there, but I did see pictures around the house of him and a wife. And but she obviously wasn't there anymore. And this older gentleman, he was hard of hearing, and so it was tough to converse with him because he just couldn't hear what you said, right? But he was pleasant. He was a nice guy. And the salesperson had to run back out to the truck for something. So they were gone for a few minutes. Now I was riding along, and so I just sat there, and I'm not going to take over the call, right? I'm not going to talk about anything. But I noticed he had a helicopter hanging from the ceiling, like a little toy replica helicopter, and it looked to me like Vietnam era, right? And so I asked him about it. And that's all it took, was being interested in that helicopter that he had hanging there. And honestly, after that, I didn't even really talk that much. I didn't even ask that many more questions. He just started telling me about that helicopter and how he flew those helicopters in Vietnam. But even before that, he started to open up about how he got married right before he went to Vietnam, and how when he went to Vietnam, his wife stayed back and she waited for him. And then how he was a helicopter pilot in Vietnam. And when he got back, how the current house we were sitting in, they had bought this house as just a shell, just walls, bare walls. And he did all the work himself. And he didn't know how to do any of it, but he figured it out. And he made a lot of mistakes, but he figured it out over the years. And he even shared how his wife had passed. And he shared with me how much he missed her. And he shared with me how he had 3 kids. And one of them had passed. And the other 2 were busy living their own lives, and he wishes he could see them more. He was just excited to talk to somebody. And he even shared that with me, that he was glad we came by, that he could chat with us today. And when the salesperson came back, he was like, what the heck's going on? This guy was quiet when I left, and now just chatty. And we saw another side of this guy come out. This quiet, gentle old man. He got kind of feisty, and He, as we were going over options, the salesperson was going over option. He wanted to play hardball. He wanted to negotiate, but always like in a joking, serious manner, right? Like he was kind of joking, but if we would have said yes, he was all for it too, right? And so he kept this salesperson on his toes. He had to keep dancing around because this guy kept trying to negotiate everything as we went through the options. Long story short, we got the sale. Would we have gotten the sale otherwise? I don't know. Who's to say? But it was a great example where he was the hero. It was about him. We asked the questions about him, sprinkled in our own little antidotes of, things we had in common, but he was the hero of that story. So that's how you get that 50-50 talk ratio. That's how much you want to talk on a call. But more importantly, ask questions, open-ended questions, and make them the hero. That's today's question of the day. If you're enjoying question of the day, follow, share, and give a rating. Question of the day is on major streaming platforms. If you have a question, reach out to me either on social media or email. Both are going to be listed below in the show description. Let's get your questions answered. Or if you're a Nexstar member, schedule a call with me and let's address your situation one-on-one. Let's get very specific to what you're up against. I'm Coach Chris. We'll see you tomorrow.